Hi, I'm Bradley Farias. I work at GoDaddy, and I want to talk about the Chrome DevTools protocol. It's a little bit of a technical talk, but it's a lot of fun, and it's something that a lot of people are really interested in, and they don't even know it exists. The first thing I gotta tell you is the title is a little bit misleading. It's called the Chrome DevTools protocol, but it actually works with a lot of different things. So when you're interacting with your browser and you're trying to understand what's going on with your web application, or you're trying to understand what's broken about a person's web application that you're using, say you're using, you know, ordering service or something like that, and you see an error, but it doesn't make any sense. If you're a developer, sometimes you open up this thing called the DevTools UI. It's a user interface to get extra information that you don't normally have access to. And it lets you do a bunch of interesting things. In some browsers, you can see different things you can connect to, like sometimes you can connect to Chromecast devices or AirPlay devices. So if you open up in Chrome or Edge this about : inspect thing, you can actually see things you can inspect that maybe you've never thought of inspecting before. And this is information that even if you have access to JavaScript on the page, even if you're the author of the web page, you can't get access to this information without opening up the DevTools. So really what's going on here is you have browsers, or maybe Node if you're running a server, and you have the DevTools UI, and they need a way to talk to each other. And so they do that through this thing called the Chrome DevTools protocol. And what's really interesting is the Chrome DevTools protocol actually works with things besides your DevTools UI. And so there are libraries written for this, so that if you want to directly talk to Chrome, you can use a library like Puppeteer and talk to it directly over this protocol. So it's a WebSocket-based protocol, meaning that it doesn't matter what language you're used to using. If you can write a program that talks over WebSockets, it could be in Rust, it could be in JavaScript, it could be in C#, you're able to communicate with the protocol. It's a little bit unique, though. It's not something that you can just plug in a library to. You have to really kind of write your own wrapper to it, because it's not based off any existing standard, unfortunately. But it has a lovely getting started guide, and you can go look up how to integrate against it directly. The other interesting thing is, unlike a bunch of debugging protocols, this allows you to have multiple clients access it. So when you have Puppeteer talking to Chrome, you can actually also open up the Chrome DevTools UI. So we can get into situations where we're not only interacting with things via a programming language, but we still have access to this a little bit easier to understand user interface of what's going on. So Puppeteer is a library we're going to be using, just for a little example that we're going to have. It's a very high-level library, meaning that it makes things easy to use at perhaps the cost of flexibility. It's generally thought of as only for testing, but that's not what we're going to use it for today, at least. But because it's a high-level API, that means that some things that we may want to get access to in our demo, we're not able to do through this library. We have to use something a little bit lower level, as they say. But Puppeteer is high level, and that's amazing for few tasks that we're going to do. We absolutely want to use the high level nature of it. It can spawn browsers for us. It can set up the WebSocket addresses we need. It's going to make this so much easier than trying to write it ourselves. It actually has a new competitor, which I feel like we should be mindful of competition. I'm using Puppeteer from familiarity, but Playwright is a new competitor that's seeking to do similar things. So if it's better for your environment, better for your programming language, or any of that, look at Playwright instead. There's a low-level API that we can use. And this is going to be really the nitty-gritty we get into in the demo, called Chrome Remote Interface. It doesn't do any convenience, really, for you. It just lets you talk directly over this DevTools protocol. That means it doesn't have any convenience things where you may want to do a simple task like wait until all network connections have finished. It's not going to provide a simple way for you to do that. You would have to manually see every single network connection open and wait for it to close. And really, you don't want to do that. So we're going to be mixing these two high-level API and low-level APIs together. And we're going to do that a little bit live. It's a bit of a misnomer. Live coding is always terrifying to me. So we've actually made our own little Node project. Node is the programming environment I'm most familiar with. You could write this in any number of languages. It's not too difficult to do any of these tasks, so don't feel like it has to be done this way. The important things are we're going to be using Puppeteer to create a browser window, and we're going to be using Chrome Remote Interface, which is the low-level API, to do some very specific commands that would be difficult to do with Puppeteer. So as with most things, we're going to create a little website ourselves. It's very tiny. But we have to create a server. It's going to listen on some address. This is, if you're familiar with creating web servers, pretty common. So it's mostly boilerplate. But once we get to actually using the protocol, we actually need to do a few things. Puppeteer can create these web browser windows. It doesn't always have to create a UI for it, meaning it doesn't have to actually show the window that it's created. If it's headless, that means it won't show you the window. But for demo purposes, we do want to see the window, so we're going to say it shouldn't be headless. And we're going to get that WebSocket endpoint out of the browser created by Puppeteer. This is a little bit convoluted to how to actually do this in a low-level manner, so Puppeteer really helps us. Once you create any browser window, if you double-click an icon to open up Chrome or any of that, it actually opens up that default Home tab whenever you do that, and we're going to grab control of it, and we're going to navigate it to our website that we made above. So we've recorded here the address of our website into a variable called href. And what we're going to do is we need to set up our DevTools for this website. For demo purposes, we can actually just show that it loads without any of this. So we're going to comment out all of this stuff and just get down to the nitty-gritty of what we want. Oh, one line too many. Whew. Nerves. So all that stuff that we're about to add to it, really all we care about is we're about to navigate this browser that we can see in our demo to our own website. And what is our own website? It's really a very minimal website. It has one heading, and it just says, hello, work from home conf. And it has a place to store messages when this inevitably goes wrong. So yeah, if we go and we were to run this, we have this set up already. So our app that creates the server is under app.js. We're just going to run it. It's going to start listening, and it opens up in a visual thing here. We can go, we can inspect this page. It works how we expect when we are working with DevTools. But when we go back to the code, we really want a little bit more info from that. So what we did was we logged the address that we were listening on, and we logged the different requests that were made. And so we can see the browser tried to get the default page on our website already, and it tried to get the fave icon. And there's a little Easter egg there. Whenever you visit anything, it also tries to get the favicon. But we don't see anything interesting about this page. We haven't gotten any access to things that we might want to do. Oh, that's a little tidbit. So what we're going to do is we're going to start doing interesting things that you might want to do. If you've ever wanted to scrape a website for an image or something like that, this is going to be an amazing way to do it. So the first thing we have to do is we have to take that WebSocket endpoint we had and connect to it. So we're going to connect to it with this Chrome remote interface. And we have to give it some parameters, nothing crazy, but it's a WebSocket, really. Any sort of thing that can talk over WebSockets is able to do exactly what Chrome remote interface is doing right here. And then after we navigate to our page, afterwards, let's just save a screenshot of it. So we're using a high-level API from Puppeteer. That means that although you could do this at a low level, there's some tedious things you'd have to do to actually do the same thing as this. So we're going to take a screenshot automatically and put it into this loaded.png file. So if we run our application again, we see it open again. But there's an interesting thing here. If we look at the files in the folder we're working with, hey, we can see it. Hello, work from home conf. That's lovely. That's just what we wanted to see. And so we can do a few more things. Chrome remote interface has this API that lets us do these low-level things about it that are a little difficult to do in Puppeteer. Particularly in our website, if we ever log something to the console, we can actually send that to the server that's running this Puppeteer instance and get information about it. So what we're doing is we're going to have in the runtime console API called interface for the Chrome DevTools protocol, we're going to listen for events that our console API called, and we're just going to print out what they are. And so when we go to our web browser and we actually have this statement where we have the console log something, we're able to see it in the server. So here, it's going to keep, highlighting that. But we can actually see, oh, we have this console log. And so this is really interesting. If you've ever wanted to kind of get information about what's going on inside of the web browser without going to manually do it yourself, you can do it with this Chrome DevTools protocol. You can listen to events as the browser does them. You can do this for things like console information. You can do it whenever it requests things. So you can actually see all the requests that happen. So if you see some suspicious behavior going on, you can actually test that by listening to these events. We actually have done that at work. We have different libraries that are set up so that we can listen and look for how the network traffic is going in our tests. Ooh. So we can do a few more things. So whenever there's an error, we're going to actually go and populate an error message on the page. And so doing that would let you see visually as a person visiting the website what's going on, but it wouldn't let you actually see anything from using the DevTools protocol. But using the DevTools protocol, we can absolutely kind of sneakily listen to what's going on here. So whenever you throw an error or have an error of any kind in JavaScript, it's considered an exception. And we can tell the Chrome DevTools protocol that we want to listen to all the exceptions. And when they happen, we want you to pause what's going on so we can do interesting things. So we can then, after we've told it that we want to listen to all exceptions and pause on them, we can listen for when it actually does pause. And when it does pause, we can do things like take screenshots. So you could actually see what's going wrong at what point in time. Because when you're writing a website or trying to figure out what happened to your website, you might have a lot of errors. And it may be good to have a visual timeline of, oh, this error happened, and that's where everything started to really go wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing a little bit as before, where we had the console API. We're going to log information about this exception, and we're going to take a new screenshot whenever there is an exception. So if there are multiple exceptions, since I only am writing to one file name, they're going to overwrite each other, and we'll only see the last screenshot, but it's a little bit of a demo. You'll have to bear with me. Just because of the nature of how this is going, we're going to need to run this again. Sorry. So when we run it again, we still see the error. Still, everything is happy. But we can actually see, oh, we not only got information about the console, which may or may not be useful, but we got information about all these problems with our website. So from there, we also told it to save to example PNG, and we can actually see, oh, that's what the web page looked like. It's pretty lovely, I guess. It's more minimal than anything. But there's a bunch of interesting information that we can get about all these things. And I know I'm running a little bit low on time, but there's so much information here. The Chrome DevTools protocol has this wonderful homepage. If you want to go look it up, it tells you everything that we did here, how to do so much more. There are so many things you can do with this. And if you're just curious about what's going on, what are your DevTools UI actually doing, they actually expose that. In Chrome and Microsoft Edge, you can enable the DevTools experiments. And if you do that, one of the experiments, probably forever, is going to be a monitor that lets you monitor the DevTools protocol. And so this is going to be basically all the events that the DevTools do. So I have it turned off right now because it gets a little bit noisy, but let's turn on the recording, and then we're going to refresh the page and we'll start to see everything. Yeah, so we see when I refresh the page, it reloaded and all this. So if you ever see something you wish you could do that the DevTools UI could do, this is a way for you to recreate it for your own use. So yeah, whew. That was a lot to take in. I do have space for a question or two, or if you want to tweet at me afterwards, I'm at Bradley Mech on Twitter. You can just message me privately if you want, or in the open. It's all good. So that's it.